Rejoice, graph sniffers, for the industry has blessed us with the Meta once again. You know the Meta, similar to the likes of the Mega 5 EST, the Da Vinci, the Dust DSP, and to a certain extent the Monarch Mark II. Well, today let me just introduce you to the newest entry into the metaverse. I can't call it the metaverse, the meta space, the Kiwi Ears KE4. Hello good friends, and welcome back to the Hangout.audio YouTube channel. And I just realized that today is probably the very first day that we're actually on time with a product launch, namely the new Kiwi Ears KE4 hybrid IEMs. The KE4 sports a 2BA 2DD hybrid setup, and at this point you're probably wondering yourself, who cares? There's nothing really much special about this driver configuration. And you would be right. From a spec sheet standpoint, there's really nothing special about the KE4 BAs and DDs. My god, wow, they put it into one IEM. That's amazing. But as I've mentioned, the special thing about the KE4 is that it hits the new meta of tuning, again the likes of which that I've mentioned before. And it not only does hit the meta tuning, but does it at a price point that is far lower than anyone else before it. The KE4 currently retails for $199 US, $100 less than the next cheapest option, the Da Vinci. So at this juncture, let me just talk about the things that excite me the most, which is the sound. The KE4 hits what I would call the new meta tuning, and some of you might not even be familiar with what that is. So let me just explain a little bit. The new meta tuning basically takes the measurements derived from the new 5128 measurement rig, as well as the diffuse field response that is related to it. Nerd talk aside, what that means is that we got a new measurement rig that shows us new things, and therefore we have to create a new curve based on these new findings. So if you can imagine it this way, we have a new flat curve on the new 5128, but no one really likes true flat. So instead, what we do is that we tilt it down a little bit slightly, because that's the ideal response in a well-treated room. And this tilted diffuse field is what we would consider as a flavor of the new meta. Now, the Harman research has also said that people love bass, so we add on extra bass onto this tilted diffuse field target, and what we get is the new meta. But some of you at this point would probably be like, well, that all seems fine, but I've never actually heard a meta IEM before, so I don't know what the new meta sounds like. For those of you who are more used to the kind of classically neutral IEMs, for example with Atymotics, then the new meta would sound a lot warmer to you. It's what I'll consider a version of warm neutral with a slight bass boost, if you will. It sounds very natural. It sounds thick enough that it gives a richness and heft to the body, but not to the point where it sounds overly muddy. And in contrast with something like Harman, it's not so thin that you just lose all the body in the vocals. It's kind of that nice little middle ground where you can say that it sounds very rich, but at the same time not muddy at all. And then you add a bass boost on top of that, because people love bass. And what you get is a signature that is just palatable. No one really hates it outright. And that is how I would really describe the signature of the KE4, and again by extension almost every other meta IEM out there. It's natural. It sounds good. It sounds normal. Normal is something that we kind of take for granted in the IEM space. We have so many different kinds of flavors, so many different kinds of X factors, that to the point where sometimes we just need to rebalance ourselves with a common reference point. But the big difference here is that with the KE4 now entering the market, you can finally have a taste of the meta for only $199 US. And I believe that this is not the end of the price wars. So again, for all those graph sniffers who wants that tilted diffuse feel with a little bit of a bass boost and don't want to spend more than $300 on IEM, well, the KE4 is one of the very few options left available for you. Alright, so with the audio stuff out of the way, let's just talk briefly about the non-audio stuff, because there's really not much that I can say about the KE4 and for any other Kiwi Ears for that matter. Inside the packaging, things are fairly spartan. You get your IEM, you get your cables, you get a case, you get tips. That's about it. In terms of the build of the KE4, well, it's fairly normal for Kiwi Ears IEM, a full resin build with a metal nozzle as well as a metal-ish faceplate. It's really more for aesthetic reasons than structural. You get what I mean. There's a nice vent at the top of the shell, but curiously, no front fin, which is something that I'll get to later. Overall, in terms of the build, the KE4, again, nothing special. It's an IEM. It exists. Nothing really stands out as good or bad about it. So I've talked about all the reasons why you should get a KE4. It is currently the cheapest that you can get for a Meta IEM. It sounds really, really good. It sounds really, really natural. The slight bass boost makes it a little bit more flavorful than it should be. But now let's talk about the reasons why you shouldn't get a KE4. And one of the reasons I noticed when I first put the IEMs into my ears, driver flex.
No! God, please, no!
For those who don't know, if an IEM is not designed properly, then if you insert them into your ears, what you hear is kind of a crinkling or even clicking kind of sound, which is the sound of the dynamic driver literally flexing inside the canal. Thankfully, this is not a serious case. Once you put the IEMs into your ears, there's that initial click and that's about it. In other cases, driver flex can be as bad as the driver's crinkling as you talk when your jaw moves. But please, boys, it's 2024. There is no reason why you shouldn't be putting a front vent into your dynamic driver IEMs. There is no reason why I should be hearing a crinkling sound when I put your IEMs into my ears. Fix this. The next reason why you shouldn't buy a KE4 is more related to the whole technicalities of the sound. The KE4's bass in particular is a little bit one note, if I'm being honest. It's not the most defined bass that I've heard. There's a bit of woolliness and not a lot of texture or even detail inside the bass hits. It's hard to explain until you actually hear what the KE4 is capable of. And next up, just the overall resolution of the IEM. The tuning is amazing, but it is held back by the amount of detail it can actually spit out. That is not my first choice for something that is detail oriented. For that, I would actually go for something like the Quintet. Again, a product that we actually sell at Hangout.audio. But as I mentioned, again, if you're just in it for the tuning, and it is an amazing tuning, then go right ahead with the KE4. And there we have it, the new Kiwi Ears KE4. 2 BAs, 2 DDs, tuned to the Meta for $199 US. For those of you who are residing in Singapore and would like to try it out now, we have a demo set. Come on down to 29B Moss Street in Chinatown. Come on down, have a coffee and ask for the KE4. It's that simple. And for those of you who are unfortunately not privileged enough to be a part of Audio Mecca, then why not go down to Hangout.audio, our online retail store. For the KE4, we are shipping globally and for free. So if you're interested in a KE4, you think that it's right up your preference, then why not just come down to our shop and we'll have one delivered to you, right to your doorstep. This is Critical from Hangout.audio, and remember kids, if it's not on the list, it doesn't exist. See you next week.